Recently, there was a bug or exploit in the game that reportedly allowed people to get insane amounts of gold. People are claiming that they got 2,650,000,000. There's even one individual claiming that they were able to receive 2 billion with a B in gold in the game. Obviously, that's a very large amount, and that would cause inequity in the community. What can be done? Is there any type of compensation coming? Well, I'm here to tell you, for our sakes, we need to hope that the answer is actually no. Why is that? Let's go ahead and break it down. As we take a look here on the official Marvel Strike Force Discord, we see there is a reply from community manager Strike Fox regarding this promo code that people are able to take advantage of. It says, "We identified an issue with a recent social media promo code that allowed for unintended redemption limits. The code was temporarily suspended to investigate and perform the necessary account adjustments to ensure a fair experience for all players. We've extended the claim period for this code, and commanders now have until Friday to claim rewards." So at the time this video is going out, I didn't claim it, and looks like time is indeed up. Friday has indeed passed. It looks like what they were trying to do here is make it fair, in the sense, give everybody an opportunity to use the code if they wanted to, and investigate to perform account adjustments. I'm hoping that means they targeted the individuals who were involved and removed the excess currency from their roster. In my opinion, that's the best way to go about it. If someone, for example, was to rob a bank, the community doesn't get compensation. The individuals who did what was wrong are targeted and brought to justice. If they hurt somebody or did something else in the course of committing that crime, then yes, the individuals who were harmed, they do indeed deserve compensation. And that's something that's going to also have to get worked out in the courts and through insurance, whatnot. That's how things work in the real world. There is an analogy to that in Marvel Strike Force, because Marvel Strike Force does indeed have an economy, right? People pay for digital goods, whether or not we think that they're supposed to, whether or not we think that that's fair. That's a completely different story. As we head over to the game, let's consider how these things happen. They're generally some type of a bug, right? There's some type of a bug, something's wrong with the tech, and that causes these problems. These problems affect us in more ways than we might think. As we go over to the command center, let's just keep this illustration of an economy in mind. As we go about our day in Marvel Strike Force, as we do things, we check off certain milestones, things of that nature, and we get rewarded for doing that. So we put in work, so to speak, and we get paid, in a sense, for doing that work. I think it was Boylan who brought out recently that there was a bug here in the command center, that there were opportunities to do things. Individuals would do that, but they would not get the reward. So let's just say, for example, that first one there, it says play war with Shadow Conclave. So we have our Shadow Conclave members. Thanks, Johnny, for those orbs. And if we were to use them in an upcoming war and we didn't get the points for this, what happens? See, that's a bug, and we're kind of owed these things here. There's not a whole lot there. There's some experience points, but there's also that 30 points that goes toward the overall month-long milestone. So if we did the work, but we didn't get rewarded, we're owed that, right? Scopely owes that to us. So what happens? They generally do some type of compensation, right? They'll put something out in the mail, or they'll give us these points, what have you, right? In some way, shape, or form, they'll make the community whole. They know that we did it. It was easy to do, and they do want to keep things moving forward, so they'll give us what we need. Now, the problem comes in is what happens when somebody does something and they receive something that they're not supposed to. Depending on the situation, that might give them some type of competitive advantage. Is that something that can be rectified? Can they simply remove that from that individual? Or is it too weird and widespread that the community as a whole is effective? If the latter is the case, then they need to give some type of compensation to equalize things for the community at large. But here's the point that many of us miss. Again, this is an economy. So when Marvel Strike Force gives us things, they're not just giving us free stuff. They can't, because people pay for these things in different ways, shapes, or forms. So when we talk about this gold exploit, individuals pay for gold, right? There's a certain amount we get for free. Anything above that, people pay for. So that compensation, again, the details of it get a little bit more slippery. Some of this is speculation on my part. I don't have all the details. What I'm doing is just extrapolating from what I've seen in other games when something like this happens. Again, there's an item that we're supposed to get for free, and then it goes up from there on the paid track. So when the compensation happens, that means it has to happen on all of those different tracks. It also has to happen within this window of time, right? Just like when we go to work, There's a certain amount of time we're supposed to work and we get paid for that, right? Maybe we get paid every week, maybe every 2 weeks, maybe every month, right? Depending on where we are, those things are different. Same thing in Marvel Strike Force. There's some type of a global economy, and I don't know if it's structured weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or more. They have that information. So when people, again, make purchases, then they have to compensate those individuals, not just for that item, but also what could have happened in this competitive period, in this competitive window. That's why things start to get weird. That's why people say things like, well, I got the compensation twice, or I did this or that, right? People aren't taking into account what else they may have done in that time period. So when the compensation happens, especially looking at us in the free to play circle, what we don't realize is happening is essentially during that time period, during that payout, we're just getting a cash advance. We're just getting an advance on payments that we would have already had. And just like individuals, they get payday loans and they get cash advances. It seems like a good idea at the time, but in the long run, it is bad because you're borrowing against yourself. And that's what happens when there is these compensation packages in Marvel Strike Force. When they're small, maybe we don't realize it and it doesn't bother us as much because we don't understand what's actually happening. For example, we're looking here again at our command center milestone, and we'll just pretend that we have command center there 110, right? So we see 110, there's a gold orb there in 110. So we'll just pretend that there was some type of mistake and we're going to get compensation. We're going to all get a free gold orb. So in reality, what's going to happen is that gold orb is going to come from somewhere else. So perhaps here we are in Breaker of Worlds, month 1. We have some time left on that. So what realistically might happen is this spot right here, this level 110, where there's that gold orb. What if Breakers of Worlds month 2, they simply just remove that from that spot. They give it to us now early in the mail, and then next month, it's just not there. There's something else there, right? Most of us, we probably wouldn't know. We're not keeping that close track. So there would just be something else there, maybe some ability materials or something of that nature, but the gold orb wouldn't be there. That way, everything's balanced. They gave us the cash advance, but then we had to pay that back. Now everything's balanced and the entire economy can move forward. As you can see, it's really simple when it's something small like this. But when we start talking about larger and larger amounts, things can get really out of hand. Now, it's not exactly the same thing, but the event that happened with the Secret Warriors helps us to illustrate what can happen when these compensation packages get too big. Do you remember how that went? They wanted to give tokens, things of that nature. There was gold. It got really out of whack. And what actually ended up happening is gold started to disappear in events, right? We would do events, there would be no gold. It was already happening on top of an economy that was changing, very confusing, very difficult to deal with. So because of that, if they simply target those individuals who did what was wrong and don't alter the economy overall, I think that's actually the best play. We already don't know how the current Age of Fear economy works. So if there's already things right here in the beginning to mess that up, it's going to be very difficult to understand it in the long run. We have to keep in mind that the overwhelming majority of the community, and we're talking about not what's best for me, we're talking about what's best for the community. The overwhelming majority of the community does not engage with Marvel Strike Force in social media to the extent that many of us do. For example, if you're watching this video right now, I definitely want to say thank you. And I appreciate that you're doing that and giving me some time and attention. Again, I thank you so much for that. But here's the deal. We know that I'm not the biggest creator when it comes to Marvel Strike Force, and very few people talk about subjects like this. So even individuals who do engage with social media, they're not going to hear this type of information. This might even be coming to a shock to you at present, but this is how things generally work. So what would happen is individuals would just get a large amount of currency and they would say, hey, I have all this free money, all this extra stuff. And what do we tend to do? We spend it. So individuals, perhaps they invest in this team you see right here, the Omen team, which if we're free to play, we want to be cautious in doing that. The resources for this team may not be there. We may be borrowing against our own account. So again, the overwhelming majority of the community doesn't understand that something has happened. They'll just see that they're getting this currency. They'll spend it, not knowing that they're going to be shorted over time. There won't be any more big, infusions of currency. In fact, the currency over time will be drawn down. So if they invested in something that they shouldn't, it then becomes that much more difficult to invest in the things that we're supposed to. And so to avoid that, I'll be honest, if anyone was asking me, it was my recommendation to not do that, to not give the compensation, but to punish the individuals who did what they know is wrong. Yes, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because there's an elderly gentleman, he's slow getting into his car, doesn't mean you get to take his keys and drive away just because he wasn't guarding his keys. That's not how life works. People who do such things, they know what they're doing is wrong. As individuals in the community, again, this is a word of warning, a word of caution. If for some reason there is some type of compensation that comes through, we need to keep in mind this is not free stuff. This is like a cash advance. The best thing to do would be to save those resources. That's one of those times where you would need to hoard that gold, and you just proceed according to the build plan that you were already using. Don't deviate. Don't think, hey, I have something extra, because we don't. We're going to have to wait till the economy evens out. So in a sense, we're going to have to pay that back until everything gets even. Again, because we're dealing with social media, I urge caution. An individual can claim all they want that they got 2 billion more of something, but have we seen any pictures? Have we seen any screenshots? I haven't. So how far this actually went, we don't really know. I'm not saying this isn't an issue. It definitely is. I'm sure you've heard a lot of the bigger guys talking about it, but we need to be cautious on how things get resolved. We need to take a minute to pause and think what's actually best for the community, not what's best for me, but what's best for the community. When people get away with things they shouldn't, naturally it angers us, and that's 100% understandable, and it should. That shows that we have a sense of justice, that we want to do what's right, and we want what's right to be done to us. So regardless of what happens, let's do our best to talk to one another, educate the community, and make sure that people don't make mistakes that will be detrimental to their account. That's my feelings on it at this point in time. I definitely want to know what you think. Let's go ahead and get the conversation started in the comments below. And yo, if you haven't seen this video right here, please check it out. It's legit.